My name is Kelly Vaughn. I am the interim dean for the School of Education at Notre Dame, Dana Namur University. And this series, I originally entitled it as SEL Saturdays, but really Social Emotional Learning Saturdays with the School of Education. And what this is it's monthly Saturday webinars for interested educators to learn about what are the developments or the thought, being a thinking
Mhm.
partner with you, of the possibilities of social emotional learning in our places, our learning communities, our schools, for us
Never
professors,
give up. Mhm.
educators. Um, it is um, to um, to think of the possibilities of how we can carry on and instill that influence of the ways of social emotional learning into for our graduate students who would be teachers in their own right. And so this semester, we've had some interesting connections or introductions into this topic and the possibilities. We started off first by a wonderful parent educator, um, Carol Ruiz, who actually did a two-part series on social emotional learning practices based on nonviolent communication. Then we proceeded on with one of my faculty members, Kate Tolnai, who talked about the intersection of artificial intelligence and social emotional learning and what are the possibilities of that. Then last month, I had two guest speakers in the same place, and that was um, let's see, Dr. Annabelle Jensen and Dr. Susan Charles, who were Dr. Annabelle Jensen is actually the founder of Synapse School and 6 Seconds, and she also was, I think, a founding member of Nueva School. And all of these organizations and schools were based on social emotional learning practices. And so we talked about those experiences and the idea of telling your story and weaving your story into optimist thinking as opposed to pessimist thinking. So this month, I have the great pleasure of introducing to all of you not only an esteemed fellow colleague, but a wonderful long time, should we say, Rachel, how long we've been. Oh my gosh, since the early 2000s, when Rachel was a fellow teacher of actually my husband at Vargas Elementary School in Sunnyvale School District. Yes, give it up. Give it up for Vargas. And since then, Rachel has gone on to work deeply with the Center for Reaching and Teaching the Whole Child, to which she'll talk about some of her experiences, I'm guessing, but also worked as a TOSA, teacher on special assignment on social emotional learning practices in Sunnyvale. And by the way, Rachel, I'll tell you this is an interesting tidbit, as well as all the wonderful people here, that when one of my faculty did an AI search on social emotional learning practices, Sunnyvale School District came up. And yep, and that's probably a lot to do with your influence, Rachel, as well as what you did with the center. She's currently working as a consulting staff person to both the center, of which Rebecca Balin is the executive director, and as well as tell me the other one too, because I know Dennis and you have told me, and I keep forgetting the name.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other nonprofit organization that I work for is called Acknowledge Alliance.
Yeah.
Yes,
It used to be called the Ulao Center, right?
they
Is it?
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
That's
many
right.
years.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do in this format is we're going to do it in a interview style, interview conversational style. Rachel and I will be talking about these particular points. And then towards the end, we open it up to anybody that would like to ask questions. Um, and so I'm going to go ahead and start off with just some questions to, first of all, to talk about our stories. And Rachel, want to hear from you. I know you told me a little bit in the past, but this is a great place for all of us to learn. Is what's a moment from your own story to shape who you are today as an educator?
Thanks for that question. And as a former educator, I have a visual to share as I speak. So, excuse me while I share my screen. Let's see. Oh, I think it's not turned on. Hey, Kelly, can you? Thank you. Awesome. Okay. So let's take a look at this little cutie. My story began when I was a child. And like many of us here, we have a story of what brought us into education and what shaped us. Here's a picture of me at 10. I was a child of the 80s. As you can see, hearts were a big deal. I think they all come back. I was playing with my Barbie. I had the coolest like jean skirt with the little booties. All that stuff has come back. I don't even know why we get rid of clothes. But anyways, I remember that year. So when I was 10, my parents, a year before, my parents had gotten a divorce, and I was living with my mom and my stepdad at the time. And we moved to a new city, so new family dynamics, new classroom, new school. And that year, my dad died of an instant heart attack. And I remember as a child getting the information and just feeling incredibly crushed. But the best thing that happened to me that week was my parents were wise enough, my mom and my stepdad, to take me out of school so that I could grieve. So we would spend time together during the day, do things that felt normal, also times just to cry. And I remember one day I did my family chore and went to get the mail. So I went to go get the mail and I opened up the mailbox and I found this huge manila envelope and out popped out 32 handmade cards by my fellow fifth grade students. So this is just kind of like a little picture of what it looked like. Some of them had like a man on a stretcher. We miss you, Rachel. Lots of hearts. And I remember just thinking, this teacher spent time to let me know that she saw me outside the classroom. And it wasn't until I started looking through the cards that I came across her beautiful card. And she was one of those old school teachers that had like the beautiful loopy cursive handwriting. And I remember opening up her card and reading it. And there were so many words like, we miss you, we love you, we're so sorry your dad died. But the words that stood out to me the most was, come back when you're ready. And it brings tears to my eyes even after all these years. And Mrs. Prince, that was her name, was that teacher for me. That was really the beginning stages of why I wanted to go into education. She saw me outside of the classroom. She exuded warmth, care. I remember that year too, she was teaching us our states and capitals through guitar, if you can imagine that. And she's just one of those people that really shaped who I wanted to be and who I still try to attain to be today. Oh, I think did we lose Kelly? Oh, there she is.
I went out of the way so that people can see that beautiful
Oh,
phrase on the bottom. So
yeah.
I kind of, yeah. move.
Sorry. Yeah.
No
Thank you.
problem. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, what also, shaped my experience in education was working as a teacher. So, I went on with that dream and became a teacher. Worked at an amazing school, Vargas Elementary. I know there's some Dolphins on the call. Go Dolphins. And I became this teacher, right? Like I wanted to be like Mrs. Prince. My even my own son got to go to school with me. So that's my son when he was really little. That was probably the best part, one of the best parts of teaching there was seeing him every day and getting hugs from him in the hallway. But like every teacher, like every educator in the field, most educators, I should say, you start with your dream. You know your why. You know the light, the things that bring you joy. And over time, I just started to get feel like a machine, right? Like, what do I need to do? What am I doing? And what's done? I mean, I think a lot of us on the call could picture like a checklist. Everybody has like their own system. I started to really, really, really lose my why. I started to get really unfocused of what my purpose was, which was to reach and teach the whole child. And it was about my seventh year of teaching that I was actually ready to leave the profession. I was just completely burned out, and I just thought, this isn't what I signed up for. So that also shaped my experience and my teacher story, um, which also brings in the jackpot, what I like to call the jackpot. I received professional development from the Center for Reaching and Teaching the Whole Child. So if you could picture, Sunnyvale School District had a partnership with the center and San Jose State University. And I know we have some Spartans on the call. Woohoo, go Spartans. And I remember I had an opportunity to be a mentor teacher or what people call a cooperating teacher. And so you could see in the picture, we're kind of off to the side with all of our students. And I remember thinking, I have nothing to give. Like, I don't know what I can give this teacher candidate. And I remember meeting her and having so many things in common, and just knowing her story helped spark my story again. And I started to realize, oh my gosh, I've gotten away from my first love, which was educating the whole child. And her joy, her excitement, and me telling my story and me understanding how to share how to be a teacher sparked all of that excitement in me again.
Hmm. I have
Yes,
a curious question.
please.
Seventh year, that wasn't when you were in the dream team, was it?
No, it wasn't. That was before the dream team. Yes.
Those of you that are fellow Dolphins, next time you see Dennis Vaughn, ask him about the dream team.
Yes,
So, okay. Sorry about that.
absolutely. No, absolutely. You're all good. Um, so I want to pause here. There's more to my story, but I want to pause for you, Kelly. Do you have any questions so far?
Well, yeah, that was one.
Okay, yeah,
Was
yeah.
that? And this is a great little segue for Center for Reaching and Teaching the Whole Child. My history with that goes back to 2013, with the previous, the founder, Nancy Markowitz, close
Yeah.
friend, when she was at San Jose State and I was at at my current university. But I am so excited to say that um, our um, our university president and provost is super excited about this upcoming partnership that we have. Um, so those of you that are on my faculty, more exciting things to come. Thank you all so much for supporting this endeavor because it's exactly these kind of things that Rachel is touching on that I think
Mm,
we can and you San Jose State folks, yeah, you can too. Um,
yes.
can make an impact with our future teachers. Okay, so that was the only thing that I wanted to add in there, plus that curious question. But go ahead, continue on with your one.
Awesome.
Word. Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, I would just want to bring light to the center. The center is an organization that really focuses on the focus is on the teacher. So, and we all know here in this room, probably most of us know that in order to reach the student, we need to reach ourselves. And that's a lot about what what I'm sharing today is in order to bring our whole self, we need to think about the social, emotional, and cultural competencies that we all carry. And the Center for the Reaching and Teaching Whole Child started to really help me to understand that these competencies are really about the teacher first. So, what are your own social, emotional, and cultural competencies? They taught me how to manage my own social, emotional, and cultural classroom and my ability to foster social, emotional, cultural competencies with my students. So, again, I want to take a step back and say that a lot of the work with the center helped me to reflect on myself first. So, therefore, I could become who I needed to be so I could thrive. So then I could help students also to thrive. But I also want to say that in that setting, which is a big part of my story, if you could picture teachers, some of the teachers that are on this call actually would be pulled from their classroom because they had a teacher candidate. And the teacher candidate would sub for the class, and us cooperating teachers would go to professional development on campus. And if you could picture Nancy Markowitz, the founder, and Wendy Thoudis, the assistant director, we walked into a table like this. This is a beautiful table, but like in the classroom, I mean, it was in a classroom with like classroom tables, okay? And it was just us. And Nancy had like chocolate babka and grapes and coffee for us. And we were, as teachers, we were just like, oh my gosh, I think I like died and went to heaven. During the day, I can actually be cared for. And what they started to do is they started to teach us and ask us, what if you started to develop your own social emotional culture lens? Meaning, what if you started to explore those assumptions and beliefs about yourself and about your students? What if you started providing modeling of what SCL looks like and culturally responsive teaching looks like in books that you use or the lessons that you teach? What would practice look like? And most of all, how do we reflect? So I just want to say that I spent a lot of time reflecting, Kelly. And as I started to reflect, I realized that in order for me to reflect, I needed to take some time. So everybody does their own reflection, whether that's through writing, taking walks, journaling, gratitude, spending time at the coffee shops, right? For me as a teacher in the day, I didn't have time to just jump over to Starbucks, right? But for me, what I was able to do was kind of take my recess and lunches and carve out what I like to call like sacred time. So closing my door, locking the door, turning down the lights, and just listening to music and thinking about what did I do well in that last lesson, right? What do I need to change? How am I exploring my assumptions and beliefs about my students? So I started to do a lot of mindfulness for myself. And then as I realized I needed to take that break, my aperture kind of grew, Kelly. And I started to see, well, if I needed this, my students probably need it too. And as you can see, this is a picture of my students. I started to teach them mindful strategies. And for those of you that know me on the call, this is the rainbow breath. And so I started teaching them different strategies. And now you can see in the picture that students, I started raising up leaders, mindful leaders, to then lead mindfulness in the class. So, again, part of my story is that, and I want to encourage everybody here on the call, that as we develop our social emotional cultural lens, we begin to start asking ourselves different questions about our students. We gather different data and we see that students, we see them differently. We start treating them more equitably. Okay. Before we move on to our next question, Kelly, I just wanted to offer that I started asking questions like this. How am I reflecting on me so I can better connect with them? Am I confronting my assumptions or am I just going on autopilot? And what stories am I willing to share? And am I willing to hear theirs? Okay, so let's stop there. So again, a lot of the work that has really enveloped my teaching and my view on education and my story was really founded based on my upbringing, the professional development I received, the community in which I was learning in.
Hmm. Rachel knows that I am, I don't know, a loose cannon of ideas that I just go off on. And you just sparked another idea in me, Rachel.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I love that about
so I know. So those of you that are in my faculty, we're going to have our welcome back dinner. By the way, save the date, August 20th. But I want to invite everyone here on this call because I'm going to do something creative. This is just a taste, a teaser. But what Rachel just did here has really percolated or brewed some ideas in mind of how I want to weave my story into my remarks, and show the connection of the work of the center reaching for teaching the whole child into the amazing teacher education programs that we have here at NDNU. So those of you that are curious, I would say feel free to send me an email and I can send you the Zoom link as to when I would give those remarks on. And again, it's on August 20th.
Mm.
We're looking at 5 to 7 p.m. 6 p.m. is when I'll probably come to speak to faculty, students, and to our wonderful guests, friends, partners. So, okay. So I think this is a great segue to ask, speaking of the center, is
Hmm.
kind of relate to this question. What is you touched on this, but maybe you can elaborate some more and then feed it into the framework. How has focusing on your strengths and cultural awareness shifted the way that you engage with your students and as a learning for for us to train new teachers? So kind of as a segue into the framework.
Sure, sure. Really what it did for me was it caused me to first develop my lens. And so we talked a little bit about that earlier, but the idea of if I can take a step back and reflect on my practice and reflect on me and how I'm doing and showing up in the classroom, then I can therefore be a stronger asset to my students, right? Another thing that it did for me was I was able to really confront some of the assumptions I had about my students. So, meaning like if I was teaching, let's say, small group, and I had different stations for students to do independent work, and I would be in the back. Some of the teachers on the call know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm teaching small group, let's say math, and I'm giving them a really intense lesson, and they're engaged, and we're reflecting and taking deep breaths. And I could see students across the room working independently and maybe whispering or laughing and really just pausing in that moment. And my old self would have been like, oh, they're off task, and shout across the room, so and so and so and so, come here. I want to talk to you, right? Be very punitive. What the center taught me was to reflect and also notice in my body, like where the stress is and examine my assumptions about those students. Like, what is the story I'm telling myself about those students across the room? Do I need to think about, who they represent, how that narrative in me is not serving them well, and taking a step back to say, you know what, I'm going to check in with myself and assume positive. I'm going to assume that they are on task. They're laughing about something that happened at recess, and it's not like they're off track, but I'm assuming that there's positive things going on. And then also checking in with them when I'm regulated, right? So that's just one small way that the center helped me as a teacher was, again, reflecting, taking a step back, examining my assumptions and biases about myself and about my students, and then slowly interacting with my students when I was regulated.
Mm, wow. That's I'm guessing that that is a developing, growing skill that under a wonderful space like the Center for Reaching and Teaching the Whole Child, that one as an educator can develop, right?
Yeah.
The idea of stopping, because that's a that's a hard skill to really develop. I mean, to stop in the middle of a frustrating teaching moment and to be able to
Hmm.
be mindful and reflect at that moment, you know. So
Mm.
I'm curious and would be very, very love to know more about it. Probably partly so that I can take it for myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If I could add a little tidbit there, growing up, I always thought that when you were in a classroom, needed to look a certain way. It was kind of like it's quiet, students are working, very focused. I was that teacher that you could see the carpet here in the picture. If you're on a square, it's crisscross applesauce, snowball hands, like very a little bit more rigid before I met the center because I thought like that was my false sense of control. Like I needed to have control of my classroom. But really, what the center taught me was we have about this much control, right? When we talk about the circle of control, and then there's all this out here that we don't have control over. But it's those stories that we need to entertain. So for me, allowing my students to sit on the carpet crisscross, I started to open it up and say, not just nilly-willy, like sit however you want, but just do what serves you best. If you're going to sit on the square, then, you know, be cautious around the people around you, but I don't expect you to hold your hands like this during my 15-minute mini lesson, right? Here are some options. Here are some things you can do to better take care of yourself as a student during this lesson. So again, the center taught me like those little small moves really help students to say, I'm a human in this class. I'm not just someone that the teacher controls and pours information into, but I'm actually an active community member in this classroom and I have agency and I can show up.
Hmm. You said a key word, and I also would be very curious. Um, and I'm thinking for our audience, you talked about moves. How about
Yes.
you elaborate that some more?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me smooth if I can, I'll talk about the framework and that will help me to talk about the moves. Is that okay?
That's
Um,
great minds think alike.
okay, so thank you. That's a good segue. So this is the social, emotional, and cultural anchor competency framework. And this framework, think of it, those of you that are on the call, as a roadmap on how to, you as the teacher, take care of your own social, emotional, and cultural needs, and then be able to do that for your students. It's a living, I like to call it a living, breathing framework because you can enter the framework at different places. But really, the framework helps combine best practices in research and teaching and learning. It was developed by educators. I think there's a one teacher on here and one that might be coming that helped develop this. It respects educators' knowledge of their students and it's a foundation to academic achievement. Okay. And we also call it a common language and a roadmap. But what I wanted to point out here is on the very outside of the ring, they're called example of teacher moves. So, as a person who learned the framework from the center, so I want you to actually start in the middle. We've got the goals. Every teacher has goals. We want a safe, brave space. We want resilience. We want responsibility for the greater good. As we start to move out, if you can go to the context, the dark green circle, we start to think about what is in our context? What is our socio-political status at the moment? But not only that, what is our students that are coming into our classroom? And what is our cultural context growing up and in the moment? Because that changes too. And then what is that for our students? And then how are we being supported by the community? And how is our family and individual context showing up in the classroom? So that whether it's through a deficit lens or a strength-based lens, right? And then you develop your lens. You're reflecting, you're providing practice, you're exploring your assumptions. Then we have the anchor competencies. These are like, think about the anchors in your classroom. I like to call it like Kelly, like Castle used very well the SCL competencies, right? Self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, social awareness, responsible decision making. We at the center really are grounded in that, but we also feel like we want to bring it to the ground. So think of that as like a 30,000 feet view. We're saying as educators, these are the SEC skills that you would need as a teacher. So we're talking about how do you build trusting relationships? How do you foster self-reflection? Cultivate perseverance, respond constructively across differences. And then in the very outer ring, so if we go maybe to building trusting relationships, it's in the red, and we move over like a crosswalk to the red teacher moves. Those are just some example of teacher moves that you might use to build trusting relationships. Now, as an educator on this call, I bet you could even see there are so many that you've done already in there. Like, how do you develop rapport, right? How do you engage with families? How do you practice reciprocal vulnerability? And what do you do to employ trauma-informed practices, right? So the teacher moves, again, are examples. And I shared some examples earlier. But in that last example, Kelly, where the students are sitting on the ground, and I went from crisscross applesauce, snowball hands, very rigid, I went to employing trauma-informed practices, meaning every student has a story. Every student doesn't show up the same way as another. Some need to move their body. Some are more wiggly. Some are neurodivergent. Some need breaks. And so what I started to do was I started to think, okay, we're all coming in with our story, we're all coming in with our needs. How can I best employ trauma-informed practices in the sense of that student feels comfortable to sit on the carpet with me while I'm teaching? How can I provide that environment and so that they can show up and learn, and that it's also I'm also exploring my assumptions about how they're moving in the classroom or not moving, right? So that's an example of a teacher move. Are you getting some new ideas, Kelly? I guess are you percolating again? Okay. So, I just want to say, I want to stop here. The Center for Reaching Teaching the Whole Child has so much to offer. And it was because of their professional development that I actually stayed in the profession probably 4 more years, actually. And it was because of them that I realized this is phenomenal. I want to go teach the world about it in my own world, Santa Clara County, Sunnyvale School District, like, my little sphere of influence here. And now I'm starting to make it about we're training teachers in other states. So we're using our framework. We've trained teachers across the state of Oregon. We are just finishing up training our teachers in Minneapolis. And we are partnering with San Jose State for their early education work group, NDNU. I mean, the list goes on. So, again, I just want to give a shout out to the center in that way. But I also want to say that this time that we had together was to also bring to surface of you could see the storyline of how important it is to know our story and to have these social, emotional, cultural competencies under your belts. Oh, I can't hear you, Kelly.
Yeah, it would help if I unmute myself.
I know I
Uh,
do that all the time.
Another partner, Cal State Teach, right? Ernest Black was the
Yes, thank
most
you.
recent. Patty
Patty
Swanson
Swanson,
Trailblazer
Trip
Award.
Award.
And Dr. Ernest Black is the system-wide director for Cal State Teach. He too has an amazing podcast. And the center, also was able to partner with Cal State Teach and had a lot of their practices or a lot of these components of the framework embedded in that teacher prep program. What's interesting is Cal State Teach is entirely online.
That's right.
It's one of the largest teacher prep programs with the CSU. So they have a long history, and it's just really neat that they embrace and also put in the framework. So sorry, shout out to
Absolutely. No, I'm
us. Like,
so glad you said that because they have put all of the framework in their modules, every single piece. And so it's been really wonderful to hear from Cal State Teach how this is empowering new teacher candidates and how they're now taking that to the field.
yeah. So our personal partnership, NDNU with the center is looking at the next generation of what's on the landscape with teacher education. And so what we're looking at is not only on the online modalities, but also looking embedded with artificial intelligence, and that connection. So that kind of research that Rebecca, Haley,
Mhm.
Rachel will be a part of with my wonderful faculty is looking at the ways in which um, faculty, particularly university supervisors and teacher candidates engage using these particular online and AI embedded tools. But where is the social emotional learning components embedded in that, and where can it be fleshed out even more? So it's a really interesting intersection. It's in connection with several other institutions that have already done this work. So they're now familiar with what the center is doing. And so we're just having this, just call it one big party moving forward. And what we want to see that can speak even to the CTC, to the California
Mhm.
Teaching Commission, this is the possibilities that we can
Yeah,
still do things that are basically needed in CTC regulations, but with innovative practices that infuse social emotional learning in the heart of it. So, sorry, that's just a
100%.
pitch.
Yes, I'm so glad you shared that. We are so excited to work with you, Kelly.
Thank you. So, and more times we can talk on coffee. So,
That's
but
right.
yeah. So, let's talk a little bit more about I know that let's see. Uh you actually brought up a number of things, but I thought maybe just one more kind of how do you say more, maybe at least one more example. What
Sure.
are your go-to practices that help
Mm,
educators stay grounded and bring their full selves into the classroom every day? And
mm,
that may connect into the last thing that you mentioned, Rachel, about um, how can for example, a teacher being mindful at the moment when there is not a great teaching moment for them, and to
Mm.
be able to shift their thinking at that moment. What are some of those practices, those concrete ways that we can I perhaps heard maybe something like a sentence stem that you mentioned before, uh,
Mhm.
that I detected as a sentence stem that we could use into our self-talk. But you elaborate more, Rachel.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly. That's a great question. Um, well, I would offer that in order to best take care of ourselves as educators, whether you are in the early education, whether you are in PK through 12, or at the university or at a nonprofit that's supporting education, I would always start with where you are strong. Meaning, if you are having a hard day and you're having a hard time being mindful, what is one narrative that you can kind of slow down in your brain that is trying to convince you that what's happening is going to sabotage or cause a lot of stress? I guess what I'm trying to say is thinking about your story, thinking about your exploring those assumptions and beliefs about the situation, and then coming back and really still doing the thing that serves you well. So let me show you a couple of visuals. We talked about story and keeping our story close to our heart, right? So I guess right here, what I want to say is if in your story, like for me in my story, you are at school, you're trying to do mindfulness, it's not working. A student activated you because, they said something to you during class that was inappropriate, right? When I think about story, this is a strategy. I think about what am I believing about myself and what am I believing about that student? What are some assumptions and beliefs I have about myself as an educator in that moment and about that student? So just taking a reflective moment. So if you can't take those deep breaths, you might think, what are the thoughts? What are the narratives going on? And are those facts? Are those thoughts that I have factual? Is that based by facts or is it based on some old story that I've told myself about myself or that student? Okay, so that's what I would do is really think about the story work and whether or not those things are factual. The second piece that I would recommend, and I put this as an example, are notes. So I don't know about you all, but I've got lots of journals, but all my journals are at home. So when I'm educating or I'm out in the field, I don't have my beautiful journal that's sitting near my bedside with my pen. I have my phone next to me. And so I put this image of notes because they're so easy to go to. I find this as an amazing practice. So you might say, well, what does that look like? You open up your notes, you give a title to what's going on. Like you might say something like wins for the day if you're on a high, right? These are the wins from my day. If you're having a hard time, I might even encourage you to do the wins as well. Maybe there's one win that you really want to highlight. Also, the notes can be a place of just letting it out. Again, bringing that narrative. Today, when I was with that particular teacher, I started to really doubt my impact with them. And then writing in the notes, where's that story coming from? Are those the facts? Where did we make some traction today? Writing it out in notes, right? So again, it's that reflective piece. And I like this piece that really has sustained me over time, and that is thinking about if you're having a tough day and you're needing to take a pause, considering what lights you up. What lights you up? So for instance, when I was teaching, things got kind of dry there. I mean, I just thought I don't know how many times I can teach such and such, And I started to think, well, you know what? Am I really putting my full self in there? What is it that lights me up? Well, I'm really an artist, super creative. I love music. I love photography. How can I incorporate that in my math lesson? How can I incorporate that at when I'm teaching science later today? Because what happens is, and we all know this, we kind of create the weather in the classroom, right? And so when we're lit up, our students feel that energy and they want to learn. And so I just encourage you to think about what lights you up, what's within your sphere. Now, let me tell you, what lights me up was art, but did you think I went to like the copy room to get a whole bunch of paints and stuff like that? No. I went into my closet in the classroom and looked and saw, you know what? We could create this and that from what we have. I have capacity to integrate that into my science lesson, and I think it's going to bring joy, right? So that's another example. And I love this picture, and we talked a lot about this today, is just really slowing down, noticing in the school day, whether you're at the university or, PK through 12, just noticing when you're not regulated and taking a step back, taking some deep breaths, and then inviting your students to do it with you. I know that sounds so simple, but is one of the best things I ever did as a teacher and now as a teacher educator. Inviting people, you know what? Let's take a deep breath. If you want to keep your eyes open or closed, what feels comfortable to you. But right now, when I was a teacher, Mrs. Bacosa needs to take a deep breath.
Mhm.
I'm feeling activated.
Mhm.
And could you help set me up for success by taking a deep breath with me? And you know what? My students were like, yeah. And they did. And then we began to create a culture around that, right? Because I think what what we want to keep on the forefront is we are humans teaching other humans. And so when we're regulated, it's not a negative. All feelings are normal, all feelings are real, and they're all good. They're trying to tell us something. They're trying to tell us slow down, right? And so what we're doing is we're humanizing the moment.
Yeah,
So those are some of the concrete strategies that I'd like to offer this group.
those are some great, powerful things. And um, if I could add to that example, just thinking from my middle school math teaching days, um, where that has been a growing, developing time. Uh, first time trying to regulate myself, not
Yes.
perfect, messy, but it gets better and better, more and more authentic, is having even that, what you just said, Rachel, um,
Mm,
even in a secondary classroom space where it's
absolutely.
something that has traditionally been portrayed as rigid. Math is a perfect example. To
Hmm.
have that moment where the math teacher says, okay, um, let me have just a calming moment here. I'm being honest, guys, or dudes, or I don't know, Gen Z, bruh. Uh, Sorry, I had to put in there.
Bruh, twin. That's the new one
Twin,
around
yeah,
our house.
twin,
Twin.
yeah. Just to say, give me a moment. And I just ask for it's being authentic. Ask for your
Mm,
time, just for a quick
yeah.
moment. Just let me kind of breathe in and think about this. And I'm surprised, I'm amazed in more recent years when I've actually did that, how even middle school students really respected me saying that at the moment as a
Hmm.
math teacher or a math teacher volunteer. So
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I'm like coughing because
Oh,
seriously, I was
yes.
something wrong. But what I want to say to the folks in this room is that these are not just elementary teaching skills,
No.
but these are skills that can be useful in whatever teaching situation you are. Another thing that I want people to think about, I mean, this is what I learned from a um, a counselor actually, and
Mhm.
a speaker, is one of the things that I'm aware with my body language is when I have clenched hands.
Mhm.
And if I notice that I have clenched hands, it means
Mm.
that I'm uptight about something when I'm
Yep.
presenting. And so I have learned over time in
Yeah.
the moment to release my hands and make them open when I sense that natural reaction. So just wanted to add that.
Oh,
Just
Kelly,
talk
I'm
some more
so
as I cough this out.
get some water. Please get some water. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because actually that's actually part of my story as an educator is I actually took a class at De Anza and it was I think a health class and one of the teachers got up and said, I'm going to teach you about stress management and what I want you to think about. And he gave an example of when he's on the road and he's driving and somebody would cut him off, his neck would start to get really tight. And he invited us as students to think about getting in touch, exactly what you're talking about, Kelly. Where in your body do you hold stress? And so I will show reciprocal vulnerability too, Kelly. And for me, when I'm stressed, my toes start to curl in my shoes, if you can imagine that. And that was one little sign to me that I am feeling uptight. I am feeling a sense of out of control. And it would help me to pause, take a deep breath, invite my students to do the same like you and really challenge the narrative that was going on in my brain.
Sometimes what also helps me is when I walk, because
Yes.
that, for me, instead of like I can imagine myself in a tight position like this, but when
Mm,
I feel free, my
yes.
hands are in a relaxed position and I can move. And moving for me
Mm,
means freedom.
mm,
And so
mm.
sometimes, like in the moment when I'm teaching, it helps when I'm moving, walking. Not because I'm trying to keep control, but it's really just to allow me to be free. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that strategy. It's
Yeah.
powerful.
So, what other, I think before we go into questions, is there any additional tips, words of advice for the folks here on this call? And, later on when there'll be a recording of this on our Indian U website, for those that will be listening to the recording, what additional tips, ideas before we bring it out to questions?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I think there are just really three questions I want to offer to the group. I'm just going to move through this real quick. Here we go. Um, Thinking about story work, thinking about social, emotional, and cultural competencies, thinking about resilience. How are you caring for you in a way that sustains your care for others? So, just encouraging us to think about what are ways in which you're caring for yourself that sustains you. So, I think about like I personally love getting pedicures, but that's like every 2 months, but that's not sustainable throughout the week when I'm stressed, right? But doing things like what we were just doing, drinking water throughout the day, really sustains me. What you shared, Kelly, taking a walk to free your body from the stress, that somatic movement. So, again, offering to folks what is sustaining you. Another offering is how are you making space for your own story and for others? Do you have a community in which you are sharing your educational story? Do you have folks that are gently nudging you in accountability to really become the best version of yourself as an educator? And are you providing in your classrooms, talking about secondary, giving them an opportunity, whether it's the first 5 minutes or the last 5 minutes of class, to be able to partner share from a prompt to share their story, right? So, what does that look like? And lastly, which I love this last one because it gives a lot of permission. And what's one tiny, again, tiny shift, even microscopic, you can make this week to show up more fully. So let's think about those slides I showed, the one about the story, the narrative, thinking about this week, I'm going to really check myself to think, is that narrative I have about that student really factual? Right? Am I really just black and white thinking? Am I mind reading about that student, what they're thinking about me? Or is it, I'm going to do what Kelly's going to do? I'm going to go for more walks this week and really invite my body into releasing stress, connecting with nature, right? Again, so what's one tiny shift that you can make this week to fully show up?
Mm. And I just realized, Rachel, I kind of unintentionally cut off those two other beautiful slides that you had. Um,
Oh, no, no,
the
you didn't.
okay, all
No,
right.
you didn't
I would
actually.
love for you to, if you want to share those, but
Oh,
let's go
sure.
backward.
Okay. Yeah, I can go backwards for sure. Yeah, definitely. Let's go back. Okay. So, one of the other offerings for the educators in the room, again, I keep stating this, early education, K through 12, university, nonprofit education, all of these things that I'm sharing can be used in all of those settings. And so the real takeaway here is that we know that building trusting relationship tells your student that they're safe. And that's where the story work starts, right? So some of the things I offer here are things that you may be doing already. So I might look at the list and really say, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I'm going to keep doing that. But there may be one that you're not trying yet that could be that microscopic move for the week. But some of the things that really helps in the classroom to really build the safety, the trust, the story work is being consistent. So, meaning if you're going to start your class or your period or your faculty meeting by allowing folks to share something that went well this week, that being consistent about doing it, because those people are actually waiting for you to do that thing, right? Another thing is really thinking about, is your classroom, your faculty room, whatever it is, set up for relationship? Meaning, if the rows are all facing the whiteboard, which can be very good for explicit instruction, but if you want time to build community, we may need to move our chairs and our tables into a circle, right? Or we might make a concentric circle and do a fishbowl activity. And I know that sounds like a lot of work to move stuff, but I'm telling you, it is worth it. And then you start to see the fruit of students really sharing from their heart. Really just trying to create those daily check-ins. I want to encourage that even at the secondary level and university level, sometimes we don't have time, right? We don't have the morning meeting, we don't have the closing circle, but what we do have are exit tickets. We also have what I like to call Google surveys. And so sometimes just having those prompts at the beginning of class saying, where are you at in your body on a scale of 1 to 10? How are you feeling physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially? What's one thing I can help you with today? What's one thing you want me to know?
Mm.
Right? So just doing those emotional check ins. And then really just providing multifaceted self-regulation. So you can see on these little yellow pieces of paper on the slide that when we're talking about self-regulations, it's not just about breathing, which breathing is amazing. It's about self-regulation is about connecting, providing safety, providing a sense of belonging in your class. What are those opportunities for them? And the second piece that I wanted to offer is fostering self-reflection to allow for story work. So we all know this, and I don't know about you, but the first one is learn each name well. My name, Rachel Bacosa, has been botched so many times. It's not the Rachel part, it's the Bacosa part. And some of you that are on the call were there that night when I got an award. And I'll never forget, they called me up and they said, we're giving the award to Rachel Barbosa. And I remember just like, oh my gosh. And one of my colleagues jumped out and said, congratulations, Rachel Bacosa, you know. So again, just learning each name well, right? And asking students to think about, how do you want to be called? What is your name? Like my son is Gabriel, but he likes to be called Gabe, right? Again, you talked about this earlier, Kelly, making mistakes, telling authentic stories around messiness. I also want to preface here that as educators, we like to have those stories in our back pocket that are filtered. So, we might look at this and be like, yeah, I'm going to share about this from what happened over my weekend, and I want to be real. I think those things are important, but they also need to be filtered, right? Because we don't want our students to know certain things about our life that, are just for home. And so it's important to kind of have those stories in your back pocket. And mostly the very end here, give time for storytelling. People just want to be heard. People just want to be seen. People want to share their story. They want you as the educator in charge of the class, the facilitator, the guide, the leader, whatever you want to call it, to actually take a step back and let them speak.
Mm,
So if you provide time to do that, going back to one slide, consistently, then they're going to want to share. They're going to want to speak up and they're going to want to um, really be their best self in that moment. They want to bring the best version of themselves.
mm. Well said. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. Mhm.
Well,
Absolutely.
hey, I'm going to do something kind of creative here. Let me kind of put here. Um, so you talked about earlier the classroom set up for relationship. Let's try this here. I'm going to do something. And you kind of witnessed to this yesterday.
Oh,
We're gonna,
yeah. That was fun.
yeah, you know what I'm going to do, right?
Oh, you
Okay.
guys are going to love it. Don't worry. It's going to be
Okay.
great.
So
There
here
it
we
is.
are. Oh, I want to put myself over here, right over here in the background. And basically, this is there's more people here on the call, but if you want to show your camera, you're welcome to do so. If you're not, it's okay. You'll have a nameplate in its place. And I wanted to just ask folks here. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Jenny, I'm gonna put you right here. Is that okay? I'll come alongside with you. So right over here. So this is a time where we are creating, hopefully, a relationship-based classroom environment or classroom or a class in an online modality. This is, for those of you that are curious, this is their Zoom app, Immersive View. And it's the closest thing that I can find right now where it allows people to, see each other. So like talking to Jenny right there. Hi, Jenny. And it's a little bit better than the Brady Bunch kind of squares. But it allows all of us to see each other in the room and opens up where we can ask questions. So anybody here in this space that would love to ask our wonderful featured guest speaker right here, Rachel, any questions or any comments about this wonderful talk that we just had? Putting people on the spot. Oh, Jenny, did you have a question? Oh, no. And I don't know if we can hear you, actually. So, okay. She just says she loves you. And there's hearts. This is great. Um, well, because I mean, I apologize in advance, all of you guys, if I put you on the spot by being here in the room. What's really cool is when we have our official recording with marketing on the NDU website, you guys are all going to be on here because now they have the immersive view that shows up. Um, so I think one additional question, if you don't mind, Rachel, if nobody else comes forward on this, is moving forward, you know, I'm going to have to put this in the current climate. With the current societal and political climate that we're encountering here in the United States. And California is kind of it's nice because in some ways it's a buffering place. Um, what hopes or what developments do you see that really can help? They're either opportunities or best practices in the field of social, emotional learning, cultural competencies for our new teachers, for our in-service teachers, um, even for our teacher educators, as we're being slammed on all sides that we can't even put things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, in our phrase. What what aspirations, hopes, or best practices that we can hang on to during this time and age? I know that's a big question, Rachel, but if you're willing to take it on.
Let me take a sip of water before I start.
And notice I'm not having clenched hands, although that was
Yes, my
clenched
toes
hand.
are not curled. Yeah. Kelly, that's such a great question because I think we've all been thinking that, or living that, breathing that in some way or form. And the one thing that my aspiration and my hope for the folks in the room and for all leaders across the United States and all over the world during this time, but especially the United States, what we're going through, is to not let the fear take over. So, with all of the changing things that are coming towards us, to take a step back and think about this is happening, but I have control over my mind, my body, and my heart. And can I take the moment to examine my story, my narratives that I'm telling myself? Like for me, when all of this happened, I got really afraid. And that's part of my story. Like I don't do well with fear and for fearful messages. And so for me, I had to work through that. I had to tell myself, you know what? This sounds fearful, but I can continue to do what I'm doing and I can continue to take a step back and reflect. And I have control over this much. This is all out of my control. But today I can show up and continue to do the work that I'm doing because that's what's in my sphere of influence.
Mm,
Right. So again, catching the thought, what's factual, what's not. Oh, that's the old me, right? But right now, I have control over how I spend my time with students, how I meet with teachers, the language I use, the breaks that I take so that I am sustained during that time. So, again, just taking that step back, catching those thoughts, and really sticking with what is in your control thoughts, beliefs, values, attitudes, and knowing that nobody can control you, right? You control yourself. You are the person in charge. And so, although things feel out of control, you have control over your sphere of influence and to not lose the joy. That would be the other aspirations. Don't lose the joy. You went into education for a reason. Keep that right near you. Like I have a couple of pictures on my desk that remind me of why I'm in education and it sustains me. A third thing would be knowing that in education, everything always goes from pendulums, right? And I hear see some nods. It's always this. And so right now we are being tested, but it's not going to always be this way. And so I think just having that mindset of taking a step back, challenging my thoughts, focusing on what's in my control, keeping the joy and knowing this feeling of uncontrol is not going to last forever.
yeah. Can I tell a really interesting story? Terry and
Please.
Janet will be familiar with this.
Okay.
To give context, our university campus has had been in a 4-year long escrow period with Stanford University of buying the property. And that led to all sorts of trials and challenges because of the misperception that we were being merged with Stanford or we were closing, being bought out, and the long journey it took. And the sale was supposed to be finalized in June of 2025. Last month, I want to say was April, Stanford made a very abrupt announcement to not only to our university, but to the city of Belmont saying, we're pulling out. We're not going to buy the property after all. Highly unusual of Stanford. They're usually very thorough. And when they've gone through the whole process of an environmental study and worked with the city of Belmont, usually it means they're going to move forward with that and they're going to seal the they're going to seal the deal.
Mhm.
At the same time, all these things that were happening on them, I think suspected what led them to make that decision with, the current administration pulling out national research funds and also, putting in a specialized endowment tax for elite universities. Um, I recognize this because as a Stanford alum, I also get university community emails, and that was the email that the Stanford president put out. But back over to our institution, our university president, Beth Martin did, she sent out a notice and just, saying that we're in this together. I was thinking for our School of Education faculty and just wondering if they're coming in a place of fear and the unknown because we've been slammed just many times, with all these unknown messages and sudden notifications that are out of our control. So I was thinking, what can we do to still be in a place of a community? So I actually consulted very quickly with my executive assistant, wonderful colleague, Maria Patron, and said, Maria, could you send this message out to all my faculty? I'm
Mhm.
rearranging my schedule. I'm closing all my meetings. I'm just going to
Mhm.
sit here the next day in my virtual office, but here's my phone number. I'm available for you. I just want
Mhm.
to sit down and whatever questions or concerns or things you want to talk out and you don't know where to go, I don't have the answers, but I will sit here with you. And bless Maria's heart, it was already 6:30, 7 p.m. when that message was out from both Stanford and immediately by our university president. It was already the end of the day. Maria went back from home, back over to the office to work to send out that message, that note, because it was so important to both of us, and sent it out later that evening and say, Kelly's available. She's, changing her schedule just to make herself available. So the next day I came to work. I didn't know what to expect. I was full of, I guess, unknowns and are we going to close? Are we going to still stay, intact? I don't know the answers, and I'm worried myself. But I didn't want to worry alone. I wanted people to be able to share. And so I did. And there were several faculty members that called and had questions, but also they offered ideas. They said, how about this, Kelly? If Stanford isn't going to come through, I have an idea, And what I did was I actually took it to our university president saying, here's some ideas. But what's really interesting is through that valley of unknown, we are coming out a lot stronger because the great news is we had even more offers. It was the best PR. The best PR. Everybody saw, oh my gosh, Stanford pulled out. Well, what's this property that they were looking at? And then all these education institutions started calling our university president and saying, oh, we're interested or we're interested. So I'm happy to say that we are pretty much closing in on a deal. This is fast. 1 month on another entity that will much better deal than what Stanford has offered 4 years ago. And it's gonna definitely put us in a long-term sustainable, endowment situation. So that was just an amazing thing that happened last month. Terry and Janet will be the first to hear about that. And the rest of you. So yeah.
Yeah. Kelly, thank you so much for sharing that story because wow, I don't know about the rest of you. I'm just like taken back by again what you did, Kelly. You took a step back, you closed your scheduling, you were there for your staff, you thought about what's in our control. You got agency, took what somebody had an idea, brought it there, and now look at the beautiful fruit that's come from that. And I just think that's a great example of how to weather the storm when the storm is like in your face. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions from here? Or maybe to add to this most recent question and topic? Um, you don't have to ask, you can share. Oh, go ahead. Tell me.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to lower my hand. Um, I've had the pleasure of serving with Rachel, and it's just hearing and having this space here. I wish this classroom was full and out the door. And I think it would be knowing that um, in my 27 years, I've really come full circle in what I really needed to hear the first year I started the classroom was that we need to have a sense of agency for teachers and to support this work. I love what I do. We love our students. We love on them, and we give so much to the point where we're unhealthy. And so when Rachel brought this work forward in our coaching cohort, we did a study of the book, and it just really encapsulated well what she even brought forth this morning is that dysregulated teachers can't help dysregulated students. And we're just having this increased number of students. And we always had them, but I think post-pandemic it just is becoming um, just more openly aware of those needs that our students have. But to also say, teachers, we need that help too, because not only for ourselves, but we are parents, we are caregivers for our parents. We have our family and friends we need to care for. So thank you to Rachel and to the team for just bringing forth the advocacy that we need to have for teachers, because I really believe that that's a progressive way to be able to advocate for our profession and to actually, this is like bringing equitable outcomes for students, is to really care for our educators and to really treat us as professionals instead of just cogs in a factory. We are not just this indispensable workforce. We are truly professionals that can bring, I mean, it's professional, it's teachers that actually bring success for students. And so not only highly trained, but highly well taken care of socially, emotionally as well. Teachers are going to be the ones that can serve the students well. And so just, there's no real question here, but just affirmation that this work is really impactful. And I just hope I mean, I'm sharing it everywhere I go. And I'm hoping that that continues on and forth. And I'm so glad that it's in the universities as well for our teachers who are getting prepared because they need to know this as well going into the workforce. Because understandably, I don't know if I would like willingly say, even to my own children who are entering college soon, like, you want to be a teacher? Ooh, I'm not sure. Like it's kind of like it's a profession that really needs a lot of resilience and creativity and flexibility and strength, a true grit to be able to stay in. And so I love it, but it also hasn't always loved me back, and because of the systems and structures. So That's
Mm.
just my little tidbit. But thank you so much for having this space and this time to begin continue this conversation, and I hope it continues.
Wow, thank you so that's so well said, Chami. Thank you so much. Um, and Janet and Terry, the book that Chami referred to, that's the book we're going to be looking into. So Terry and Janet, oh, that's the book that we'll be looking into. It's the book that was written by Nancy Markowitz. It's part of our partnership, consulting partnership with the center. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the book. Just really quickly, I might just want to introduce Terry and Janet are part of my amazing special ed teacher education faculty. And I'm just incredibly grateful for them because they are doing some innovative risks. I mean, they're willing to take the kind of the brave new step into the unknown with online and AI, early adopters. But at the heart of it is social emotional learning. I know that's something, and so they're my champions, and I'm so excited. Next year, they're the ones that will, you know, I think just really want to know more about this. Did we have the name of the book in there? Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Any other comments? Oh, and there, I know it's hard to see it with this immersive view, but yeah, we're going to get copies of the book to share with our with our faculty, university supervisors. So,
Rachel, is there a student that comes to mind that really benefited from your social emotional um, use in the classroom? Or maybe if you could reflect on a student that maybe you weren't as knowledgeable with these skills that you wish you could have imparted your love on?
Absolutely. Oh my God. I just need to give a shout out to Jenny. And thank you, Chami. Like, I loved working with Chami. She is just, we did so much good work together. She's an incredible advocate, Chami. It's, if you don't know her, you get to know her. Jenny, I worked with on a first grade team, and Angie Cordova as well. They both taught me how to be a first grade teacher. Coming from third grade, I had no clue what I was doing. And actually, Jenny was really pivotal in teaching me about social emotional learning. I don't think we really had the language yet, but I remember being dysregulated as a teacher and her coming in and bringing me like a pom pom, like those soft pom poms, and being like, can you hold this? And, like you need this, your student might need this to be regulated. And I remember just making that connection and thinking, oh wow, that's the beginning of reflection. So Jenny, you taught me, girl. You taught me well. But yeah, Jenny, thank you for the question. I did have many students I can think of, but there is one in particular that comes to mind, and that student is in a couple of the pictures that I shared. This particular student would come to school unregulated. And I remember their kindergarten teacher told me, oh, you've got your hands full with this student, and just really started bringing a lot of narratives. And as you know, in the room, you kind of want to know those stories ahead of time, but then you kind of don't want to know the stories because it kind of taints your view. So I was kind of taking the stories and like, okay, putting them in the back pocket, but like wanting to see the student for who they were, together. And this student would come in and they would literally move in their chair like all day long. They would interject in my teaching all day long. And it would be lots of like anxious statements like, Mrs. Bacosa, I don't know who's picking me up after school. I don't know. Who is it? I don't know if it's this person, or this person. I remember thinking like, we're learning about how to write a haiku poem. And this student can't even access the content because they're worried about who they're going home with. Right. And so I started to take these, like all of us here, started to take inventory, gather the data. Right. And like, okay, they move a lot. Maybe, they're neurodivergent. Maybe they need to move their body. Like, that's great. Like, how do I support them? Maybe get a different chair. But then the worriness of after school really started to sit with me. And I remember after school meeting with the mom, and she told me, Yeah, you'll see me on Monday, but you'll see so and so on Tuesday, so and so on Wednesday, so and so on Thursday, and so on Friday after school. And I remember as an educator thinking, this student doesn't know who's picking them up after school and is so worried about it. What can we do to support this student? So I met with mom, and she had her own story, a lot of trauma, a lot of things going on. And I remember thinking, could we together create a calendar? Like on the back of her, we had these folders that we used. And at the very back, could you put down the name of the person that's coming so that when we start the school day, she comes in. If she has that question, we can just turn around and say, "Oh, look, grandma's coming to pick you up. It's Wednesday." And her mom followed through. And I thought that little small move helped, because then this student didn't interject anymore and ask who's picking me up, and slowly started to like take a step back and access the learning. Also the movement, um she needed to move. She needed to move her body in general. That was part of her personality, but I think also what her mom shared with me and I started to see over time, it was also a symptom of trauma. And so what I started to realize is this student really needs to move, and I can't manage that all day. So as a collective community, we're going to ally around this student, but not call her out. So if she needs the movement, I know I need the movement. I know my students need the movement. Instead of just singling her out and saying, oh, so and so needs a break all the time, it's like, you know what? We're going to take a collective break and we're going to do some mindfulness, or we're going to move our body, or we're going to go. What we used to do was like take a break from learning, run all the way to the fence, across the grass, come back, and come back to learn. Right. So, again, just really seeing her for who she was, what the students could do as a collective. And guess what? After time, because students would get annoyed, they would say, why does she keep moving? Why does she, and I'd say, you know what? We're all made differently and we all need breaks. So let's do it together. And I remember they allied around her, and eventually, y'all, and this is true story. I'm factual girl, okay? She became one of my mindful managers. True story. And I have a picture and a video of her like leading mindfulness, and I'm like, that's it. That's it. It's seeing her for who she really was and gathering. That's what that social emotional culture lens does, right? It gathers different kinds of data about students and really trying to but then also a lot of the work was me recognizing my own and managing my own emotions, Jenny. Like that day when you came and gave me the pom pom, that was the beginning. That was the beginning of self-regulation for me, and really starting to see my students differently. So thanks for the question, Jenny.
That's an amazing seed. What Jenny to Rachel to these students. That's powerful. Thank you. Hmm. I have to say my seed actually came from Dennis, because years ago, do you remember there was like the Ulao Center? And he was one of the first early um kind of participants. And he would come home and tell me, this is what I learned. This is what I learned, mindfulness, and this is and he just his curiosity, his interest. Um, any of you guys know him, he's not one that is an extrovert like his wife. That is just, but he's got this soft, centering, kind of reflective stance about him. And when he spoke about that, it kind of was a seed for me that led to actually to the center. So again, a seed to a seed to a seed, right? And here we are. We're all and we're all continuing planting seeds in our own ways. We all are doing it here, in our learning communities. So I'm sorry if I keep saying with the
No,
last speaker,
I I,
last voice.
I want to say hi to Angie's little sweetie. Hi, Noah. Good to see you. Oh my God. Big,
I know.
handsome.
Hi.
I wanted to give a shout out also to Acknowledge Alliance. So, it's the little seeds, right? Jenny, Angie, like, working with different folks, the community, Ashley, like, there's certain people that just kind of was part of my teacher story to help me to become who I am, right? We all have our parts. And I participated in a Knowledge Alliance group as well. And I started to realize how important that was. So, Acknowledge Alliance is an organization that really makes their focus to help the educator, their well being and resilience, so then they can help the student. That's their main focus. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And so when I'm not working at the center part time, I work for Acknowledge Alliance and I meet with educators all day long at a middle school one day and at another school, an elementary school. So picture teachers can drop in for a session, a 30-minute session. I'm not a therapist, but I can provide therapeutic practices, strength-based coaching, asset-based coaching. And so from that having been being part of a participant group and then seeing the transformational work that it did in me and my groups that have been through Acknowledge Alliance made me want to be a part of that mission. So I just want to give a shout out to Acknowledge Alliance. They are doing incredible work in many school districts. And I just want that to continue, like a fire, like a wild blaze across the Santa Clara County. So if you haven't learned about Acknowledge Alliance, please check them out.
I think I just realized we're past 10. We gotta go. So I want to thank everybody in this group. And a big shout out. Thank you, Rachel. Um,
Mm.
it just yeah, I'm blessed. And stay tuned. This is the last of our 2024-25 series, and we ended it with a bang. Stay tuned. If you're interested, feel free to reach me. I don't know how to send you my email, but somehow I think I know all of you guys here. So, or I know people that know you. So if you want to, get connected, I'm happy to provide my email here. We have these School of Ed newsletters. Um, and we usually say what upcoming events are coming. I'm looking at bringing this back on in 2025-26 with some, more speakers and more ideas. But I want to thank you, all of you, for your time. Have a wonderful weekend. All right. All right. Bye.
Thank